Hello and welcome to another pick a card reading. In today's pick a card reading, we are exploring what cycles you are currently breaking, what cycles you need to be focused on breaking, how you're breaking these cycles, any kind of advice we can get you, wherever you're at in your journey, whether you're at the beginning of it, in the middle of breaking the cycle, or you have already broken the cycle. This is going to be a confirmation for whichever point in your path you are on, okay? So I have prepared 3 groups with little owls, and look at them matching these color cards. I had no idea that I had matching color cards for these owls, so beautiful synchronicity there. Let's get you a close-up. So group 1. This is the color, and it's called Better Lime. Better Lime. And this is your little owl for group 1. What cycles are you breaking or working towards breaking? This is your group. Let's put that there. I got some ash over everything right before I started this, so that's what you're seeing me battle with here. Group 2, this is your owl. It has a little bit of like kind of like an iridescent white belly, but this was the closest match I could find. Umber Stone, a beautiful gray. That is for group 2. And then group 3. This is your color. It is called Deep Teal. And this is your owl, which is also very teal. I went with the little owls because I figured when it comes to breaking cycles, it requires awareness, attention, and wisdom. So I felt the owls were appropriate. Okay, so group 1, group 2, and group 3. I'm going to give you a moment to zone in or zone out, whichever you need, and timestamps will be in the description below, and I will meet you at your reading where we will talk about what cycles you're breaking. See you there. Hi group 1, this is your reading if you chose the lime green owl with the Better Lime color card. We're going to set this over to the side, put the owl right up here, and then we're going to get right into your reading. Okay, so we're taking a look at what cycles are you breaking. So what I want to do first is I want to pull 2 tarot cards, and that's going to give us an idea of what kind of cycles you struggle with. And then we're going to take a look at how we are breaking these cycles. So, for group 1, give me 2 tarot cards, 2 cards on what cycles we're working on breaking. What cycle are we working on breaking for group 1? There's the Page of Swords. And the Seven of Swords. Okay, so here's what I'm picking up. You're working on breaking a cycle that has to do with confidence, but not so much confidence on a somatic level, but more so confidence on an intellectual level. Confidence on a determined level. This has a lot to do with determination. It's a very mental energy, obviously, because we got some swords going on here. But the cycle that I'm seeing is that you psych yourself out. The cycle that I'm seeing is that you get hooked on something in particular, and then you kind of start running in circles. So this can show itself in lots of different ways for a lot of different people. For some, this is a matter of having a really difficult time with your attention span, taking on too much. For some, this has to do with always feeling drawn to newness. Now, what I think is interesting here is that this is a cycle that we're trying to break, right? Because the way that it's playing out isn't very productive. I think that's the issue for you, is that you're really trying to break this cycle because it feels very non-productive. What's interesting to me is that I see actually a lot of potential here. I see a lot of potential for you to really utilize a lot of what you do. It's just the application of it is kind of off, because that's where you get overwhelmed. It's like you're a collector. You collect a lot of information. You collect a lot of insight. You possibly even collect a lot of confirmations. So on a spiritual level, you might constantly be asking for confirmations. But then the way to break out of this cycle is to follow through with action based on the knowledge that you've received. What you're doing here is you're collecting information and then you hoard it. You hoard it, you don't do anything with it. And then because you don't apply it, you feel like a forever beginner, which is, again, not a bad thing. There's a lot of potential in that, because forever a beginner is, keeping a beginner's mind is the Fool's card, right? But here it's more so that there's so much busy work. There's so much mental busy work. And there's a lot of expectation here. There's a lot of expectation of trying to move forward to, oh, this is so interesting. I think there's a lot of, part of the difficulty, the weight of this cycle for you is that you feel like you don't reach maturity. You don't reach a level of completion. You don't reach a level of graduation because you dip your toes into all these different things. And it feels like, I'm thinking of Master of None. Let me look up that, because I always think it's so beautiful how that quote gets cut short when the beauty of it is the latter half of the quote. Let me look it up. A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. And so it's a famous quote, but most people will only quote the first half, which is a jack of all trades is a master of none, because they say if you put your attention in too many things, you're not going to master anything. But that second half is so profound, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Okay, so that's the thing. I'm seeing a lot of potential in the cycle, meaning that this is actually something that you can utilize to really drive you forward if you harness it. And that's the thing, when we don't, especially when it comes to mental energy, when we don't harness that energy, it runs kind of like a hamster wheel. It runs wild, right? And then we keep repeating, and we feel like we're not making progress. So what I'm seeing for you is that this is not a bad cycle. And I want to be careful, because I know that it can play out in so many different ways. And especially when it comes to mental health, I can see this very much being a very vicious cycle of constant self-sabotage and constant cutting yourself short and boxing yourself in. But what I'm seeing is that you have this experience of it being a hamster wheel and you're going in circles, in circles, in circles. What I'm seeing though is that what you're doing is you're actually going in a spiral. Right? So we are moving forward. Even when you're moving back, you have still made progress. There's a lot that you're gaining. I'm telling you, you are a hoarder. And that can be, that can show itself in very many layers of your life, meaning you can actually hoard physical things, or you may have a difficult time keeping your surroundings organized. But also just in a lot of ways you hoard memories, you hoard mental like notes, you probably hoard things that people have said to you. So it's really important that we kind of bring some organization into that, whatever that means to you. You don't have to Marie Kondo your life just because it worked for someone else, right? The messiness isn't something that needs to be eliminated. It just needs to be organized in a way that it makes sense to you. Okay, let's get some oracle cards. I really kind of want to keep today's reading a little short. Let's get one from this deck. This one's poking out. I see you. Radical self-love. We can only receive love to the extent that we unconditionally love and live the truth of ourselves. So I did notice when I pulled these two cards at the bottom of the deck, we had the King of Cups. You might have a tendency to intellectualize feelings, and you might have a tendency to intellectualize emotional experiences in particular, meaning experiences that force you into an emotional state. So from a young age, that would have been however your caretakers were treating you. It left you in a state of emotional disarray, and you had to try and make sense of the mess, okay? And because that was really difficult to do and kind of outside of your reach and outside of your scope of understanding of the world, you were grasping at things and trying to make sense. This feels like every time something like a new concept comes into your life, you try it on, as in, maybe this is what's wrong with me, maybe this is what I've been missing, maybe this is, you know, and it's like your curiosity and your desire to understand is such a blessing, but you're using it against yourself in a way where you don't need to be fixed. You don't need to solve any kind of riddle around your worth or your purpose. Everything along those lines will fall into place. I strongly feel that you are meant to be a very naturally curious person, but you're using it in a way to kind of like fix something about yourself. If we just change our perspective on how we utilize that brain power, if we just give it something to, I was gonna say give it something to chew on, because I'm thinking about a dog. You know, there are specific dog breeds that were bred to be high energy dogs, and nowadays they are kept as little as pets, right? And they used to be labor dogs. I'm specifically thinking of all of those dogs that were shepherds, or that just need a lot of action, a lot of running in their life. And when you have a dog owner that doesn't understand the breed and what they were bred to do, that dog will be kept in an apartment and it starts going crazy because internally it is programmed to run. And now it's living in this tiny apartment and it gets to run maybe, if the dog is lucky, maybe like 20 minutes a day. So the skill that that dog was bred to have becomes an annoyance to the owner because it's like, ah, my dog's going crazy again. My dog has the zoomies again, right? So but it's actually an incredibly useful skill. It's just not being applied correctly. Now, I want to take a look at, this is a cycle that we're breaking, right? So what we're breaking here is you are on your way to really accepting yourself as you are, recognizing that there isn't another self-help book that's going to fix you. Like, yeah, you can read those if you enjoy them. And wanting to better yourself is not a negative thing, but feeling like you have to better yourself in order to be worthy of connection, love, friendship, family, that is an issue, right? So within this cycle that you're breaking, it's really just a tweaking, right? And there's also something about, I'm going back to like the hamster wheel, we're moving forward. So the idea of breaking a cycle, you have very mercurial energy, by the way. So I'm thinking of like the cycles of Mercury and the way it goes retrograde. And this cycle is like, yeah, sometimes you're gonna, I think on a very regular basis, you're gonna feel like I'm going backwards and you become overly analytical again, but it's more so a period of reflection. You're very flexible and you're very malleable is what I'm also getting, but I'm getting like a different sense. I'm getting endurance, and there's something else that's trying to come through and I'm having a hard time with it. But the way that you're breaking the cycle has a lot to do with appreciating, instead of using the skill that you have, instead of seeing that as something that you need to fix, appreciating it as a skill that you can point your attention to something and utilize that skill. And that's really going to kind of keep you moving forward instead of moving in place, which also to me shows me that you need to use some of that intellect in a capacity outside of yourself. Okay, let's get 2 cards from this archetype deck. We're going to get one about what you need to release and then what you need to harness. Ooh. We have Mystic for what you need to release. And we have Prince on what you need to harness. Okay, so Mystic says light attribute revels in intimate union with the divine. Shadow attribute delusional rapport with the divine. Prince says light attribute romantic charm and potential for power. Shadow attribute using power for self-aggrandizement. And that's exactly what you're not doing. That's kind of what, okay, interesting. Okay, so what you need to release, I just looked up and saw we're a little bit crooked here. What Spirit wants you to release moving forward is, and now I'm taking this back to the idea of spirituality, right? Especially because we have Mystic. The search for answers. The search for answers. Revels in intimate union with the divine is about a conversation with the divine, right? And so it feels like you're trying to be in constant conversation with the universe, with yourself, you're trying to constantly get confirmation, which is what I said earlier, right? Constantly in search of confirmation, confirmation, confirmation. And Spirit is saying like there's no need for you to constantly get that confirmation of yes, you're worth it, yes, you're worth it, yes, you're worth it, of course you're worth it. There comes this time where in order to break this cycle, you need to embody the knowledge that you have gained, because you're getting confirmation after confirmation. And this, I could also see this playing out in personal relationships, that you might have somewhat of an insecure attachment style, meaning you need a lot of affirmation and you need a lot of kind of conversation to get that feeling of like, yeah, this person still cares about me. Okay, nothing has changed. They texted me. They still care about me. Like it becomes overwhelming. And I'm not trying to tell you that you are overwhelming, but for you, it becomes overwhelming, but this need for that constant validation. And so what we're trying to break here is how to tap into the validation that we've already gained for ourselves, right? You have gained a lot of knowledge, you have gained a lot of wisdom, you have gotten a lot of confirmation. Like when you ask for something, I do believe that in some way or another, you typically receive the confirmation that you're looking for. But Spirit says in order to break this dependency on confirmation, you need to kind of you got to embrace not receiving an answer and not receiving confirmation. With radical self-love, we can only receive the love to the extent that we unconditionally love and live the truth of ourselves. And in romantic charm and potential for power, this is really both of these are asking to really kind of embrace yourself, faults and all. That's a Beyonce song. Let me roll these dice. We have the second house, that is a house of material possessions, but it is also the house of self-worth. And then we have Capricorn, and then we have Pluto. Huge, deep transformations that have to do with how you establish yourself within the world without constantly seeking validation or confirmation that this is okay, that this is acceptable. Because why would you, there's a weird quote coming through. Why would you change your shape to fit someone else's mold? Why would you change your shape to fit someone else's mold? Accept yourself as you are, and accept yourself as a fluid energy. You are not one thing. You are, because there's this search for, okay, if I finally, this kind of feels like trying to figure out what are my boundaries, right? Way back in the day when the world wasn't fully discovered, I mean, it's always been there. Nobody needed to discover it. But when we didn't have a clear idea of what the landscape outside of our village was, we would send people out to map the landscape. And that's what I'm getting here, is that part of the cycle that you perpetuate is that you're constantly mapping out, and you then determine your boundaries based on the feedback that you get. But what happens in the absence of that? What happens when you decide where your boundaries are just based on what feels right to you? Whew, okay. I'm going to get one from this deck, and then we're going to close it out with one last oracle card. I intentionally wanted to keep it low on card count today. Any advice on how to break? Any advice on how to break this cycle? Oh, we have secret. Okay, I think this is really cute, and I'm putting it down over Mystic as well. And you know what? I'm gonna take this one as well. It's at the bottom of the deck, Creation. I think this is adorable because it's kind of reminding us of the fact that there are certain things in life that we're never going to make sense. We're never going to find the answer. It's certain, and there's a certain beauty in the secrecy of life. There's a certain beauty in the things that are inexplicable, that we'll never understand, that we are not meant to understand, and we don't have to understand. And part of that is also the idea of, where do I begin and where do I end? You know, why do you need to map that out? Because I do see you constantly. I feel like you probably, listen, I can relate to this part because hypochondria in the day and age of the internet is so real. I mean, I read one article on WebMD and I think I gotta go to the doctor, right? So, but that's kind of what I'm picking up on here, is that you see something and then you think, oh, maybe that's what I have. Maybe that's what I am. Maybe that's what's the problem. Maybe that's what I need to fix. Maybe that will fix my life. Maybe that will make me finally happy. And none of it really fills that void. And so because of that, you're endlessly searching. You're not supposed to be endlessly searching, though. What you're supposed, check out the green here with the lime green and the green in this egg and Creation. You're not supposed to constantly be searching. You're actually supposed to be using this skill, because again, your curiosity is a skill, and you're supposed to use that in creating the life that you want, creating the person that you want to be, and not seeking. You're not seeking the person you want to be. You're not healing into the person you want to be. You're creating. You're an active participant in that. This feels more like you're trying to learn the secrets of the world in order to find who you are. And this is energy that Spirit wants you to lean into more, is actively participating in life and creating the person you want to be. That is beautiful. Okay, let's get one last oracle card, and this one we're going to read from the booklet for group 1. Ooh, that was, yeah, okay. We have Lullaby. Look at the colors matching up. The blue. Let's read it. That is a number 38. Restoration, Dreams, Rhythms, Lullaby. Now, there is something here about you being so curious that you want to solve all the riddles. And again, I'm taking it back to spirituality, specifically like you want to understand, how does it work? How does it work? How does it work? And it kind of keeps you in this loop, because whenever you ask how, you get thrown back into kind of like a wild goose chase, because the how does not matter. The how doesn't matter. It's what are you going to do with it? When it comes to your spiritual wisdom, your spiritual connection, your intuition, the how does not matter. What are you going to do with it? Embrace the things that don't make sense and see what you can create in spite of not understanding the how. Oof, okay. Lullaby. Restoration, Dreams, Rhythms, Lullaby. As dusk arrives, we notice a cello player about to play a lullaby to welcome the sleep we need so dearly. The cycles of day and night, light and dark, orchestrate our natural sleep rhythms. We give so much during the day. Night is our time to recover. On his instrument we can see the moon and stars. They are the guardians of our dreams tonight. Rest with nature's lullaby, blowing gently through the window. Tomorrow, wake to all the days of your life. Rest is really important because I can tell with this cycle that you perpetuate is very mentally draining. It's very mentally exhausting because you feel like you have to play catch up, because it's like, I haven't completed anything, I have to start something new. You might be running from hobby to hobby. You're constantly looking to find that one thing that just makes everything else make sense. And you feel like that would then be a good payoff, and it's not worth it until you find that one thing, because you feel like you've expended so much. But you're collecting. You're a collector. You haven't wasted any of your time. You're collecting, even in the nights that you haven't slept and that you are up until the early morning hours because your brain won't let you sleep. You still collected a lot of wisdom from that. And so breaking the cycle for you is about accepting. It's about accepting some powerlessness. And especially with self-sabotage, we often self-sabotage because it makes us feel like we're in control. And we'd rather self-sabotage an outcome or a process than see what happens when we just trust and let go. So this is definitely a control issue to a certain degree. But yeah, by just trusting yourself and really kind of easing into the things that don't make sense, the things that are mystical, the things that are just kind of accepting, when you see something and you're like, oh, that feels very spiritual, that feels like a sign. Instead of going outside of yourself to search for answers, if you don't find anything within yourself in that moment, then just let it be. There might come a time later in that day, later in that week, later in that year where you're like, oh wow, that thing. I just figured out how to make sense of that thing. So I think for you, a lot of answers, I think a lot of your cycle, the cycle that you're breaking is the search for answers outside of yourself. I think that's how we can pretty fairly sum it up. And the way to do that is to employ some radical self-acceptance and radical self-love, as this said, and to really kind of see the benefits in this skill that you have and use it to manifest the life that you want to be living. Okay? I'm going to leave it there. I hope that resonated. And of course, I did not keep it short at all. I always try and I never succeed, but once I get to talking. Anyways, thanks for hanging out. I really hope it resonated, and I hope I get to read for you again sometime. If you would like to book a personal reading, you can do so on my website. I do not solicit readings via DMs or messages. You can only book via my website, okay? I would love to do a personal reading, so go check that out, and yeah, hope to see you soon. Take care. Hi Group 2, if you chose this lovely gray, by the way, don't ever let anyone tell you that gray is a boring color. I love gray. Umber stone and this white-bellied owl. This is your reading. So we're going to set these down right over here and we're going to get right into it. We're going to pull 2 tarot cards, and those are going to tell us about the cycle that you find yourself in, the cycle that we are currently breaking or attempting to break. What is the cycle that we are breaking for Group 2? It was a gentle fly out. Ooh, we have the 9 of Pentacles. And the Page of Swords. Interesting. The Page of Swords came out in the first reading as well. Okay, at the bottom of the deck we have the 10 of Wands. The cycle that you are breaking is the idea that you have to do it all on your own, that you have to prove yourself worthy, that you have to figure things out with no resources, that you have to go from rags to riches, whether that is on a material plane or whether that is on a spiritual or I already said material, or an emotional plane. And again, sort of similar to group one, I definitely see that there's actually a lot of potential in the cycle that you perpetuate. However, you get in your head and then you have a lot of expectations in yourself, very high expectations, and very high expectations to really be visibly well established. Meaning, you're very focused on manifesting yourself a life that is very accomplished and very comfortable, which is not a bad thing, obviously. We want to strive for comfort and we want to strive for independence. However, I'm feeling that in this case, because this is a cycle that we are trying to break, it has a lot to do with hyper independence, and it comes from a place of not fully seeing the big picture. Yeah, with this Page of Swords, because if we were a little bit more, if we were a little bit more open to how the universe truly works, you would recognize that in order to really feel established and secure and grounded, you have to open yourself up to external support a lot more. Okay, here's where we draw the line. Here's where it's different from group one, because in group one it was kind of the opposite. It was they were very group one was very much focused on external validation. You're coming from a place of severely desiring no external validation. You have your mind set on, like, I need to supply for myself. I don't want to rely on anyone. This is hyper independence, but it's coming from an immature angle. I don't want to call you immature. I'm saying that it's more so that the point of view of this expectation is immature. And once you mature that point of view, you will recognize that this isn't something that you just achieve completely on your own, that there is a support network that is always involved, whether that is spiritual or material or emotional. So the cycle that we're breaking is, I think, has a lot to do with pride. The cycle that we're breaking has to do with understanding, why do I have such a strong desire to not rely on anyone? We're kind of bringing focus to, where did that come from? Where did that start? When was that implemented? Why do I feel like I cannot depend on anyone? Why does it feel only safe when it's just me? And so through examining that, we're breaking this cycle of hyper independence. And I think that's going to open you up to receiving a lot more support, which then in turn actually really does get you to this point. So through breaking a cycle, how can I explain this? I'm trying to find a metaphor, but the idea is essentially that you perpetuated a pattern because you thought this pattern is what would achieve this Nine of Pentacles. But then you're perpetuating it. You're constantly perpetuating it, trying to achieve, constantly in a state of trying to achieve. And then once you realize, oh, I need to actually change the way I do this, meaning I need to actually open up and to accept support in order to achieve this, that this isn't something that's just created out of nothing. Okay, sorry. I know I tried to get to a metaphor and I couldn't quite. So I'm getting to a different angle now, because what I'm getting here is the idea of a plant growing in soil. And you're that plant, and you have this expectation of you want to grow big and strong. You cannot do that without healthy soil, right? And you cannot do that without the energy of the sun. And you cannot do that without the water from the skies. So there's a lot of things, even when a plant grows completely on its own in a forest somewhere, there's still a lot that it pulls from its surroundings, right? And so this has a lot to do with opening up in order to break this cycle, to get to a point where you're not judging yourself too harshly for not having reached this. The moment that you kind of let go of the judgment of having to do it on your own, you reach this. That's what I was trying to get at earlier. I can't think of a metaphor for that though, but it's the moment, like you're so focused on like, I have to accomplish this kind of frequency for my life. And the moment that you recognize that all you have to do is kind of open the doors, you immediately elevate to that frequency. I hope that makes sense. But that's how you break the cycle. Let's get you an oracle card for group 2. How can I break? Oh, key to intimacy, yeah. You don't let people in. And even if you think you do, you only let people in to a point where you still feel in control. And you don't let people, sorry, there's a lot of things coming in at once now. Because you have that sense of control and that expectancy of being able to manage on your own, you let people in, but you don't let them in to see your struggles. You may be the kind of person that people come to when they struggle, and then you're very kind of, you have like a good overview of things and you have good advice, but you don't let people in when you struggle. So you're able to give support, but you're not able to receive support. Key to intimacy. Intimate love is a core need to be met in relation to ourselves and those closest to us. The journey to intimacy often includes learning what love is not. So if we put that in relation to these cards, that could very well have been the experience of learning what love is not, forcing you into a place of extreme hyper-independence. Meaning you've had experiences that have shown you what love is not, but you didn't receive it as this is what love is not. You received it as, and this is what people are selling as love. I don't want that. This is what people are selling as support. I don't want that. Keep that away from me. I'll support myself. I'll love myself. Ouch. But again, it's an immature point of view. Again, I'm not saying that you are immature. I'm just saying that it's a partial point of view. You're not seeing a full picture because you're basing your opinion only on your experiences. Totally fair, I get that. But with time, as you are breaking this cycle, with time you're opening up more and more, you're seeing more and more of a bigger picture and understanding where you fit in relation to others, and different kind of experience of love, of different types of love, really broaden up that experience. So it is about intimacy, it is about control. But it is really about you opening up to different forms of intimacy, meaning right now, not necessarily right now, it's different for everyone, but at its worst, this cycle keeps you super closed off to people, not allowing in any kind of support. The way that we open this up is by here and there in conversation, talking a little bit more about the things that are really difficult for you, opening up to friends, opening up to coworkers, opening up to family, like just in all directions, and more and more and more and more it opens up, and then you allow more experiences in, which feels very dangerous because more experiences can definitely mean more heartache. It can mean more disappointment, absolutely. But you're also creating room for others to surprise you, for others to show up in a way that you didn't know was possible. Let's get you some archetype cards. So I'm going to pull 2 cards from this deck. We're going to pull one on what Spirit wants you to release, and one on what Spirit wants you to embrace more moving forward as we're breaking this cycle. For group 2, what do you want them to release and let go of? An aspect. Ooh, we got one. We have Trickster. Yeah, you're not being honest with yourself, to be quite honest. Trickster. Transcending convention, stuffiness, and predictable behavior, manipulating others through duplicity. And what do you want them to embrace moving forward? What do you want them to embrace more of? It's this one. We have Athlete. Dedication to transcending physical limits, including handicaps, development of personal willpower, and strength of spirit. Misuse of, we don't need the shadow attributes because it's about what they want you to embrace. Here's the thing. Trickster is what they want you to release, what they want you to let go of is, actually, I think I saw it at the bottom of the deck here. Melting mask. Allow your spirit self to shine through the many roles you fulfill. To release any kind of masking, any kind of, oh, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm totally fine. Like I got it. Because you're lying to others and you're lying to yourself, and you're not allowing others an opportunity to help you. You're not allowing others an opportunity to even get to know you on a deep level. So that's kind of what we need to release, is where are you kind of creating smoke and mirrors of like, I've got it all under control, because you're actually afraid to allow in anyone to support you because you're expecting that they won't support you. With Athlete, what I'm getting here is actually that you need to be more of a team player. And that is that expansion of your perspective, right? The maturing of your perspective. Because with athletes, a more immature perspective on being an athlete very often has to do with, oh, I just want to win. I need to be the fastest. I need to be the best. I need to be the strongest. It's very self-focused, right? But a more matured perspective recognizes that even within solo sports, you still need a trainer, you still need a support system, you still need, the gym that you go to. An athlete, especially like the professional athletes, they come in walking in with entire entourages and entire teams, and they know that a lot of people rely on them and they rely on a lot of people. They know that they are part of a system. And that there's a lot of pressure there because there's a lot of interdependence, right? Interdependence, not codependence. There's a lot of interdependence in that. But there's a lot of strength and support that athletes get from that companionship and interdependence. So in order to break this cycle, what Spirit is asking you to do is to release the areas of your life where you're lying to yourself of like, I have this all under control, or I'm the expectation of achieving completely without support. And not, I absolutely want to make this clear, not because they're saying you're not capable of that. No. Sure, if you wanted to do it that way, you're absolutely capable of succeeding that way. But it's the harder way to make it happen. By opening yourself up, you expand your perspective, you allow energy in where you co-create versus you hammering away at something every day. And it's like trying to take down a wall by hammering your head against it. Where it's like, if you just kind of looked around and opened yourself up to the possibilities, you might be able to see that you could ask someone for directions and they show you a way around the wall instead of you having to, hammer your head against it. Let's get... Well, actually, let me roll my dice first. Tell us about this cycle that we're breaking. We have the 9th house, which is big picture. That is so fitting. That's beautiful. The 9th house is it's a spiritual house. It's a house of long distance or far travel. But it's also just a higher devotion and big picture and understanding that your world is as small as you let it be. And this cycle that you're breaking has a lot to do with shifting your perspective to zoom out, to recognize your role in things. That the world does not depend on you doing it on your own, but on you integrating yourself into your role in things. And then we have Aries. That is that headstrong energy of like, no, I got to do it on my own. With the North Node. Yeah, this is a very big lesson for you. This is very likely a lifelong lesson, and which just means that you're going to break down that self-built wall around you. You're going to break that down time and time again. Like, you're going to bust through layers of, because you also can't, it's just not realistic. When you're having issues with letting people in, it's kind of like an onion, right? With all the different layers. You're not going to crack it up all the way open and let everyone into your core. Like, no, you have to kind of do it bit by bit. And so layer by layer over your lifetime, you're breaking this cycle layer by layer. And you have to do it in a way that you feel comfortable, absolutely. We have Aries energy here, but it is definitely something that you are very focused on. This is something that is very much, it's very important. It's very important, and it's something that's going to come up again and again and again. And I just want to kind of simplify what the juxtaposition here is. It's the idea of I have to prove that I can do it by myself. And the rest of the world being like, no, you don't. You don't have to prove that to anyone. You don't have to do it by yourself. You just need to open your eyes and see where you fit into the world and connect. And be open to connecting, be open to receiving and connect. Especially with the 9th house and then Aries. Aries is a very self-focused energy. The 9th house, again, is very big picture. So this is a lifelong journey to go from very self-sufficient to very open and kind of really receptive. Yeah. From hyper-independence to becoming more receptive. Oh, I just looked up and the recording was at 22 minutes and 22 seconds. Okay, let's get some advice on how to break this cycle. We have don't let in. And we're going to get one more for the other side and get some advice on how to break this cycle. Whoa! And then the magic within. That is so cute. For some reason, the way that's don't let in the magic within. At the bottom of the deck, we have the bell. Okay. So for don't let in coming out over tricksters, it's that voice of this darkness that is like, no, they're just gonna let you down. Don't let them in, don't let them in, don't let them in, right? That voice is a trickster, right? That aspect where you're lying to yourself, this dark figure, that is the lie. That is the lie feeding into your mind of like, no, you can't trust anyone, you can't trust anyone. And then the magic within on how to, so don't let in is talking about don't let that voice control you, and don't let that voice disconnect you or keep you disconnected from others. And the magic within, this really feels like, especially coming out over athlete, this really feels like the runner's high that people get when people have been working out for a while. You get that point where you get that rush of endorphins. There's something that you will be able to tap into once you open up, and you think, oh, okay. Okay, you're a very capable person, and you were probably molded to be a very capable person. And that is, honestly, in today's day and age, common sense is not that common, right? It is very rare to be a very capable person and to be very, overall, this has a lot of Capricorn energy, by the way, Capricorn and Aries energy. But there's this feeling of, if I let people see or know how capable I am, they're just going to take advantage of that. And what I need to do is I need to take advantage of that, which makes me feel like you probably grew up in an environment where you were taken advantage of, where your skill and your capabilities were taken advantage of, meaning you had to provide at a very early age. You had to show up as functioning and capable. You had to show up as an adult before others, which then created a disconnect between you and other people your age, probably. And it just seems like if you let people in, especially peers, same aged people, you were so ahead of them that they immediately were like under your wing, right? And so there is this sense of, when I let people in, they become dependent on me, and then I just have more shit to worry about. And so the magic within is saying, don't deprive others, and especially your connections, of the magic within you, because you're afraid of the dependency. You are just as much afraid of being dependent on someone else as you are afraid of someone being dependent on you. You don't want any ties. And so you know that you are very capable, and that you're very, very just, you have a very rich inner life, and you're keeping it from a lot of people because you don't want people to have access to it. And that's your right. You have the right to protect yourself, but I'm telling you that this is a cycle that you are breaking over time. It may take a long time. It may be something that you've already been in the process of, and this is a confirmation that you've been doing a great job. So depending on how this makes you feel, you will know where you're at in your journey. But you're keeping your light from a lot of people. And over time, your journey consists of letting more and more of your light shine. And that feeling or that fear of dependency, no matter which way, is going to diminish, and it's going to become more of a joy to connect. And you'll recognize that you actually kind of amplify that light within you when you connect with other people who also share their light. Yeah. All right, let's get one last oracle card, and this one we're going to read from the booklet. So overall, I want to say that the cycle that you are breaking has to do with your hyper independence and the expectations of eliminating all dependency. You're breaking away from that and becoming more of a team player, which then immediately puts you in the frequency that you've been wanting to reach anyways. So it really has to do with, like not letting the past, and particularly not letting that voice that tells you like, no, don't, you don't want help because everyone that helps you is just going to ask for a handout once you've made it. Like that voice, to recognize that that is a trickster voice, that is not who you are on the inside, because on the inside you want to be a part of your community. You want to provide. You want to provide for and be provided for. Like you want to be a part of the greater picture, because you can't remove yourself from that unless you move to a tiny island somewhere, but then, you still have needs. Okay, we're gonna get one last oracle card for group 2. Look at that. That is so beautiful. I have had this deck for a long time. I have never gotten that card. Never. 12. All is connected. Are you kidding me? That's exactly what we're talking about. Big picture, and that your part in everything. That's exactly what I was talking about. Sorry, this kind of stuff never gets old. Okay, number 12. All is connected. Innovation, transformation, growth, and release. A girl sits on a tree trunk and holds leaves in her hands, while others blow away in the wind. A small spider holds a few leaves together with his fine filament, even though the wind threatens to tear them apart. Don't be afraid of changes. Release your fear by letting go. Change is hard and often painful, but it is the only way to grow. You may drift, but you will never lose yourself. Life goes on and nothing ends. It is reshaped into something new by the wind. No better nor worse, but different. And in that change lies wonder and openings. That gave me goosebumps. That is so cute. All is connected. Absolutely. Your journey in breaking this cycle has to do with changing your belief system around quite literally everything. Because the more you grow into the belief system of, you know what, we're all connected and we're all one, it makes it easier for you to not just rely on yourself, to avoid all threats of dependency. It changes that threat into something that is actually beautiful, a beautiful interdependence. I love that. That's really inspirational. And I needed this reading as much as you, so I think I'm allowed to say that I love that. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you would like to book a personal reading, please do so via my website, which is linked below. I will never reach out via DMs to solicit readings, so please don't get scammed. But I would love it if you booked a reading through my website because I love doing personal readings. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I hope I get to read for you again sometime. Until then, take care. Hi Group 3, this is your reading if you chose the deep teal with the teal owl. We're gonna set these right over here and get right into your reading. Okay, so we're going to pull 2 tarot cards, and these are going to give us some insight into what cycle we're dealing with. What cycle you are about to break, what cycle you're working on breaking throughout your lifetime, or what cycle you recently have broken. You will recognize where you're at. It's going to be different for everyone. Okay, for Group 3. Ooh, it got really hot in here all of a sudden. What's going on? Group 3, what cycle are we looking at for Group 3? Oh, we have the Fool. And the 3 of Swords. And the Page of Wands at the bottom of the deck. Okay. Oh, my love, you break your own heart over and over and over. I feel you're very torn in 2 directions, where on one hand, you're so hopeful, and then on the other hand, when you don't see that hope mirrored back to you, when you don't see physical results from that hope, you get really discouraged. And so you kind of go through highs and lows of, I'm not bothered, I'm very bothered. I'm not bothered, I'm very bothered. It feels dizzying, it feels disorienting, and it feels really it feels very exhausting. Very exhausting. You know what I'm getting here too, with just even looking at the backgrounds, where I live in the summertime, it gets really hot and humid, and then in the evenings there will be thunder and lightning, and the weather breaks because it's so humid, so it has to break. And so that's what I'm seeing here. And there's a song that's coming through right now. I don't know who the artist is, but it's the lyric that I'm hearing is 4 seasons in one day, like 4 seasons in one day, which also is just like the idea of going through a lot within a short period of time, where it's like, on one hand, it's like, I got this. I'm totally on board. Life is just there for the taking, and then like an hour later, complete hopelessness. And what feels disorienting about this is that I cannot make out if this is actually affecting your belief system. I think that's kind of where it's like you're missing something to hold on to, something to ground you, which for a lot of people that is a belief system. So whether that is a religion or a culture, like there's for a lot of people, they use cornerstones of civilization like that, religion, or cultural traditions, to kind of help them navigate this and to kind of keep them grounded. So there might be a missing aspect of that where it's kind of like you feel like you're wandering. You're trying to find something to ground you. It feels very disorienting and very kind of like you're looking for a home base. You're looking for something to help you steady your perspective. Because right now it's up and down. Honestly, it's almost making me nauseous because it just feels like ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. And when you're up, you're up. You're like, it just feels like you're always going to be up. And when you're down, you're so down, and it feels like you're always going to be down. Even though you've had this cycle, you have a very intimate relationship with this very, I was going to say something else, but the word abusive is coming through, with this very abusive cycle. But I was going to say something else. What was I going to say? Volatile. That's the word I was trying to go for. A volatile cycle. This is a volatile cycle. So as of right now, what I'm picking up on, the best way to kind of break this cycle is to create cornerstones for yourself and to create kind of like points. So, you know in video games, there will be moments where you can save your progress. So in case you die, you wake up just wherever you last saved your progress, right? That's what I'm seeing is necessary to kind of break out of this cycle, because right now it's almost like if this was a video game, it's like I'm invincible, and then you die, and then you feel like you have to start all over again. And this applies in lots of areas of your life. So either it applies for you in within friendships, within family, within self-love, within your career, within love. Or it applies to all of those areas because it bleeds into all of those areas, because it's a very fundamental thing that you're dealing with. Of volatile emotions running your entire and determining your entire perspective, and kind of also determining your energy levels for sure. And so what we need to figure out is how can we establish ways to kind of save our progress and remind ourselves whenever we feel low again, whenever we experience a disappointment, to remind ourselves like, I'm not starting over. I saved my progress. Let's get you some oracle cards. I am confused right now because I keep smelling something very particular. It smells like some sort of food, and it's not that there's no like neighbors or anything that I can smell their food. And it's not mine. It's not coming from outside. It's definitely like a sensation, but it smells, I don't know. I have to see if I can determine what it is. I think for some reason I'm getting like a peppery sense, pepper, something musky. Oh, we got 2 cards. I would like 1, please. Can we just do 1? Let's try that again. Okay, for group 3, can we get 1 on how to break this cycle? We have distorted desire. Conscious desire rarely satisfies the unconscious need driving it. Excuse the sirens in the back. Conscious desire rarely satisfies the unconscious need driving it. I also am picking up now that part of this cycle and the reason why it's so volatile and like you're bouncing back and forth between extremes is because I think you tend to run away from disappointments and heartache. You run away to the point where you're like, I need to get away from this as quick and as far as possible. Both of them. Look at how she's running away. And therefore, you probably seek out new experiences that take you as far away as possible from heartache, from pain, from mental anguish. You're like, just take me away, just take me away. But then when you reach that point and then you experience another disappointment, that's why it's such a deep, deep fall, because you never saved your progress, right? You didn't deal with whatever you were meant to deal with at the time because you were like, just take me away from it, just take me away. But you never get away from it because eventually you create situations that take you back to it, and then you feel like you've made no progress because the last time you had to deal with it, you just avoided it. So you didn't make any progress. I heard something recently in a show that I was watching. Let me try and piece it together. It was a therapist, and he said that he said, I think that reinvention is a form of avoidance. That's what I'm seeing here with this Fool card. Reinvention is a form of avoidance. And so conscious desire, the desire to get away, let me get away from it, let me get away from it, rarely satisfies the unconscious need driving it, which is to heal. But we're not healing, we're just getting away, getting away. Okay, I'm going to pull some archetype cards. So these cards, I'm going to pull 2. The first one is going to be what Spirit wants you to release. And then the second one is going to be what Spirit wants you to embrace more of in order to break this cycle. Which again, it's a very volatile cycle for you. It's very exhausting. What do you want group 3 to release, to let go of moving forward? We have storyteller. Oh, oof. That one hits. That one hits. What they want you to release is the narrative that you're feeding yourself. The narrative. There's a narrative that you go to every time. It's like every time something is disappointing, it adds into this giant bucket of, oh, see, it's just the same as. And this probably goes far, far back in your life. Like this bucket was established at some point, and every time something goes wrong, you add it into that bucket. And I don't know what the label on that bucket is, but it might be something along the lines of self-worth or, like unworthiness, something like that, where it's like every time something happens, you just add it into that bucket and you create this narrative of that's just another sign of this. That's just more proof of this story that you've created. And because it's such an awful story, you don't want to live that story. You don't. Because it's not true, because you've just kind of like held on to every disappointment and made it fit into that story. And that's not to say, I just want to be clear, that's not to say that your traumas aren't valid. I do believe that there are things in your past that kind of set this up, right? That kind of put the bucket in place and started putting the first things in there. But then from there on, you added every little thing that you could in there, because it's like, I don't want to deal with this. I'll just throw it in the bucket that I already know exists. And then that's how I'm going to make sense of it, but I don't want to deal with it right now. So your traumas are absolutely, totally valid. However, you're using them. You're using them in a way to you're using them as a catch-all. To kind of not deal with things individually, but just to throw it into the bucket of like, oh, see, I always screw up, or see, I never learn my lesson, or see, I'm never gonna find love. Whatever it is, there's some kind of narrative that you're telling yourself, and everything that goes wrong, you throw it in that bucket, and you're like, see, it's just another drop in the bucket. So that's what Spirit wants you to release in order to break this cycle, is the stories that you tell yourself. And now what to embrace moving forward to break this cycle? What do you want group 3 to embrace more of? This is an awful shuffle. Let's try that again. What do you want group 3 to embrace more of? I love that. Child magical. Seeing the potential for sacred beauty in all things, the belief that everything is possible. So instead of feeding into this idea of, see, again, this is just more proof of this narrative that I've already created, more proof. It's about taking experiences and not tainting them with that gunk in the bucket. Experiencing them as their own experiences and seeing how you can digest them in the moment so that the bucket isn't so heavy, right? Because if you're just adding on to all of that old stuff, you're never going to get around to it. You're just adding on, you're just adding on, you're just adding on. And that's why you kind of want to run away from it, because it's become it's become its own thing. It's become its own like monster entity. It's overwhelming to deal with it. And so what we kind of have to do in order to get to a point to be able to tackle it is, again, save your progress, which means process as you go. The things that are really kind of difficult to deal with, process them one by one and try to keep them, even though there probably are patterns that link back to that ultimate first layer in the bottom of the bucket, right? But still try to process in isolation from that. Try to process whatever is happening, not as proof of whatever is in that bucket, or not as confirmation of the worst story that you've created, but just for the sake of processing. Spirit is asking you to kind of cut off the linkage to your history and to kind of process whatever you're dealing with at the moment in isolation. I hope that that makes sense, because then that kind of helps you to not add more to the bucket. And then you kind of feel more in control of your present. And as you're feeling more and more in control of your present, your capacity to deal with things becomes more stable and more large. And then when you have some extra time, you'll find yourself looking in the bucket and pulling something out and being like, you know what, let's take a look at this. What is this? You know? And then bit by bit, you kind of start to make sense of things in a very manageable way. So seeing the potential for sacred beauty in all things, the belief that everything is possible, versus feeding the same old narrative. Let's get some more oracle cards for you. So this is going to be some more advice. Let's get some advice on how to break this cycle. I forgot to roll my dice. And at first in my mind I was like, it's okay, I'll just pull these cards first. But then I kept staring at the dice and I was like, no, I have to. So let's do the dice. We have the 7th house, we have Pisces, and we have Venus. Okay, so this definitely, for a lot of you, is going to have to do with romantic relationships and connection to people one-on-one, and love, and your relationship to love, and how that's unfolded over the course of your life, and how a lot of it has been volatile and confusing. But that's where the focus is. That doesn't mean that this doesn't bleed into other areas of your life, but that's definitely where the focus is. So this can definitely have to do with past relationships, and whenever there was pain around them, you kind of, you know, especially breakups and stuff like that, you kind of try and run off and just start over somewhere else. And you don't fully process what actually happened. You don't fully, because you just plug it into that same old narrative. And the narrative was established probably in your earliest intimate relationships, which would be, you know, childhood, between child and parent, in a loving, intimate connection, meaning intimate in terms of learning how to receive and reciprocate love, that there was some kind of pattern established there, and then going forward, every time that you've kind of tried to connect with someone in an intimate way, that pattern was perpetuated. And you just, you know, every time it went wrong, it was just like, well, that's the only way I know how to love, so I'm not gonna, I don't know, just put it in the bucket. I guess I'm not worth it. I'm not worth the effort, right? Or nobody cares. Just put that in the bucket, put that in the bucket, put that in the bucket. Time and time again. Okay, now let's get some advice. How to break this cycle. We have the Sun. The Sun in this context is telling us to bring awareness, attention to the stories you're telling yourself. Just awareness. Don't judge yourself for it. Just bring awareness to that. Meaning, whenever something happens, or when you think of the past, when you think of particularly painful memories, just write down the narrative that you're giving yourself, you know? Sometimes that can be very powerful when we write down the things that we say in our head, because it's like, ouch, like that's painful to write down, because that is like, why would I be thinking that way about myself? And we have clarity. So clarity and awareness, both very kind of similar here. But it's kind of like following of events, meaning we bring awareness to the stories we tell ourselves, and then moving forward, whenever we encounter situations that are reminiscent, that in the past we would have been like, oh, just throw that in the bucket. Moving forward, you're going to have a lot more clarity, which means you're going to have a lot more autonomy. You're going to have the choice. Do I really feel the need to run away from this? Or can I just face it, deal with it now, and be done with it? And that clarity is going to be very empowering. And you're going to recognize, especially with Child Magical, you're going to recognize that you're able to, you're going to be able to make sense of it. You're going to be able to access that clarity. I also want to point out how these two figures are pretty similar. Even like the color skin, which is kind of like purplish. The tone is very similar, and the hair is very similar. And here she's running away, and here she's just sitting in this field and being like, you know what? Let me just sit in this for a while, because that's, I think, an issue that you have, is that you don't like sitting in the emotions, which is very, very relatable. Of course, nobody wants to sit in heartache, but there is a certain awareness that we do need to employ when things come up, so that we don't repeat the same patterns over and over, right? So yeah, in order to break this cycle, we need to bring awareness to the story that we're telling ourselves, the narrative that we are feeding. And does that narrative serve us, or does it restrict us? Does it support us, or does it hold us back? Because to me, it just looks like that narrative really just supports us running away from facing the things that we don't want to face. Which is kind of like a fight or flight situation. It's a protective mechanism. It's a survival instinct, right? I'm not judging you for this at all. This is a pattern of survival that you have implemented. This is something that kept you safe, it kept you going, it kept you alive. However, patterns are meant to keep us safe, but at some point, the pattern will kind of trip us up, because we have grown and matured, and we get to a point where the pattern isn't keeping us safe anymore, but it's restricting us. And that's where you will recognize, I'm living this volatile pattern. Up, down, up, down, up, down. How can I get to a middle ground? How can I get to a place where I feel safe? How can I get to a place where I feel in control, and not just like I'm running away from something, I'm experiencing something, I'm running away from something, I'm experiencing something. How can we get to a point where we don't take each experience as an attack, or as I'm trying to be very careful with my word choice, because I don't feel that you necessarily victimize yourself. I don't think it's that extreme. For some, sure, but for the most part, I don't think that you mentally victimize yourself, but I think because you're not paying attention to the pattern, you put yourself into situations that just perpetuate the pattern, that are keeping you very restricted. And because you're not facing what you're running away from, you're repeating what you're running away from. And that leaves you in a place of not being able to receive all the possibilities that are truly out there for you. because it leaves you in this cycle where you're not living out your autonomy or your free will or your choices, but you're living out this cycle of running away and experiencing pain, running away and experiencing pain. It also shows me that you seek out, especially again when it comes to romantic relationships, you seek out very volatile relationships possibly. And you're worth a lot more than that. You're worth a lot more stability and a lot more love and a lot more. One of the cards that actually, when there were two cards that tried to come out, one of the cards was sharing. There's giving and receiving and giving. So I think a lot of the relationships that you seek out before breaking the cycle are very one-sided. Okay, let's get one last oracle card, and this one we're going to read from the booklet. But just to kind of summarize, the cycle that you are breaking has to do with not perpetuating the same narrative that is probably your biggest wound, and not adding every pain that you experienced to your biggest wound, because that makes it seem like you'll never overcome it. But trying to heal and overcome bit by bit to get yourself to a level point where you're not living in the extremes. Getting yourself to a level point can get you to a point where you can really bring awareness to the stories you're telling yourself, and then you catch yourself because you bring light, awareness to that. Then when next time something happens and you try to make it fit and throw it into the bucket, you'll be aware of what you're doing. And when you're aware of it, it's like, okay, wait, do I really want to do that, or should I just deal with it now? And you will choose to deal with it now, because the awareness is shifted, and you'll notice that it's just easier. It's annoying, sure, but it's in the long run easier to deal with it now than to just add it to the pile. Okay, last oracle card for group 3. What do we get? The perfect key. The perfect key, I think, is one of the top 3 cards for this deck. It comes out so much for my collective. The perfect key, which is just always a reminder of the autonomy and the power that you hold, that nobody can take away from you. And I do want to point out the yellow here in the Fool card, and the yellow here in her wings. Like, there is a lot of hope that you have. And it's that narrative that always cuts that hope down. Try to embrace more of that solar plexus energy, which is the yellow energy. That is your confidence and happiness. So 29, it says, the perfect key, happiness, encouragement, and unlock feelings. Yep, you have locked them away. You're like, I'm going to deal with that bucket another day. This card shows a woman holding a key in one hand and a cage with a heart in the other. There is a bird sitting on the woman's shoulder, encouraging her to try different keys with his mouth. Yet, the woman has already found the perfect fitting key. She can open the cage and open her heart. Sometimes life is only a search for the right key. There are so many things that are hard for us to approach. We can have trouble accessing our own feelings. Thanks to friends and family, there are people who can help us find the lost keys to our personal happiness. That is exactly it. Finding the lost keys to your personal happiness. And I think a lot of this has to do with regaining autonomy and control over your life through awareness and clarity. Through awareness of when you are perpetuating old narratives that are really just keeping your pain locked up. But locked up doesn't mean that you're dealing with it. Locked up doesn't mean that it's healing. You know, just leaving something behind doesn't make it heal. They say time heals all wounds, right? But I don't know, emotional wounds, they need to be addressed. They need to be brought to awareness, and simply ignoring them won't let them heal. Okay, that's what I got for you. I think we got it all. Really, just in terms of advice, I think the most important part here is because the rest will fall into place, because you already have that proclivity, that tendency to being really hopeful. Like, I think you have a lot of, I think it's incredible how much drive you have despite going through those ups and downs, right? And so I think bringing your awareness to the stories that you tell yourself is just going to snowball into a lot more and more and more awareness. And then again, after that comes clarity and choice. And that's when you will choose how you move forward. And that immediately breaks the cycle. The moment that you implement choice, because you're not just running away, but you're actually dealing with things, and you choose to not perpetuate the cycle of running away, the moment you make those choices, that's when the cycle is broken. And also within romantic relationships, that's when you will choose healthier relationships over volatile relationships. When you bring awareness to the stories that you're telling yourself. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you would like to book a personal reading, you can do that on my website. I will never solicit readings via DM, so please don't get scammed, but I would love to do a personal reading for you if that is something you're interested in, because I love personal readings. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope I get to read for you again sometime. Until then, take care.